Here comes our attendees. They're flowing in.
Wow.
Happy Tuesday, everybody. The day is flying by. I don't know about anybody else. Love to see some familiar faces in here and names. If anybody, as you're coming in, you want to drop in the chat where you're based or any particular projects you're working on right now, spaces that you're focused on, please feel free to chime in. And I think the chat might be disabled for some reason. I'm getting alerted of. I'm not sure why. Let's see if I can change the settings. Well, we will give her a couple more minutes for people to continue trickling in here and try to figure out why our chat is not working this particular time. That's usually the fun part. We get our questions in there and let's see.
The Q&A is definitely
maybe
working.
Maybe give it a try. See if okay, yep, we've got Q&A working. Yay, it works. Okay, chat is working. Awesome. I just had to change a little setting on there. Glad it was that simple. Yeah, we are
Wow. Clark.
Oh, there's a Tennesseer.
Peter.
Another from DC, your old stomping ground.
Yeah, I know some of the DC people. North Dakota, wow.
Yeah, all right.
Yeah.
Oh, very nice. And I think Cheryl might be having some issues with hearing. And I think everybody else can hear us okay since we're getting responses to our questions. So hopefully we'll be able to kind of tweak your settings over there, Cheryl. You'll be able to hear us soon. Wonderful. All right, well, we've still got lots of people joining in. If you didn't hear me at the beginning, feel free to drop in where you're calling in from today in the chat, and any particular things you might be working on right now, whether that's a book project or if you've got something out and you're jumping into the speaker world. Would love to hear more about everyone's kind of area of expertise and focus. While everyone's doing that, I'm going to go ahead and get us started today. So my name is Marissa Eigenbrud. I'm our Senior Vice President here at Smith Publicity, and I'm so excited to be moderating today's webinar, which is focused on becoming a coveted speaker, how authors can build their speaking confidence, land an agent, and be a part of successful events. I'm going to just go over a little bit of an overview of our event today. So, there comes a time in many authors' careers when they feel the pull to take the words they've written on pages and share their stories and expertise with a live audience. Knowing where to begin, though, can be difficult. I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir with that statement right here. How should you start your journey as a speaker? What are some of the best practices for speaking at events? And how can you consistently tie your message back to your book in the end there? How can you even look at finding and securing the right representation to help bring your speaking career to the next level? So these topics and many more we're going to address in this super fun and engaging discussion with two of the leading speaker and author event professionals in our industry. Each of Perry and Josh here bring their own unique business model and perspective to this conversation. And with that, I'm going to tell you a little bit more about each of them. So First here, we have Perry Hooks. Perry, gonna give a little wave to everybody.
Hi.
Perry Hooks is the president and co-founder of Hooks Book Events, which was founded in 2007. Hooks Book Events is a woman-owned business based in the DC metro area, which has produced on average 150 private and public events per year since 2011, including events for Nobel laureates, Pulitzer Prize, and MacArthur Genius Award winners. Hooks Books Events infuses innovative thinking into organizations through interactive book and author programs, providing enriching professional development and client events for corporations, US government agencies, and nonprofit associations. So super excited for you to learn more about what Perry does and her focus today. In addition to Perry, we have Joshua White. Over the past decade, Joshua White has been at the forefront of the professional speaking industry, working with some of the world's most renowned speakers and corporate clients and charting a new direction for the sector. As the founder and CEO of Epic Keynotes, Joshua has helped pioneer a new approach to representing speakers, from a transactional bureau to a consultant for both speakers and corporate clients. Joshua launched Epic Keynotes to help companies and speakers leverage the full potential of speaking engagements. I mean, the two of you, these backgrounds, these bios, so impressive. We're so lucky to have the two of you here with us today. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your schedules.
Thank you.
Glad to be here. And it's been fun to get to know Josh in this process. So, new friend.
Likewise.
Wonderful. So I'd love to start off and Perry, I'll throw this question over to you first. What kinds, types of authors and experts do you work with? Again, Josh, would love your perspective after Perry's response too. And, kind of, are there certain accomplishments, attributes, fields of work, et cetera, that you look for when you're considering the type of author to work with?
Yes, first of all, off the top, it's all what I would call serious nonfiction wonky stuff. That's kind of a DC term. This business was birthed in DC, and the federal government has been a consistent client. So mission specific topics depending on the agency that I'm working with. But we work with writers, certainly acclaimed writers in academia, writers that have definitely, as you noted, we've worked with many Nobel laureates, a real accomplishment on these topics that are of interest to our government and corporate clients. They're new books, so we're working with writers with new nonfiction titles because we're helping them launch the book with these series of book events. So that's kind of the overview. Serious nonfiction, wonky books.
And Josh, how about you? What do you look for in those that you work with?
So we work primarily with business authors or authors that have a message that are relevant to businesses. The majority of the speaking engagements we book, either on behalf of companies or for the speakers that we manage, are for internal company events inside a company. So we really look for authors that are not only an expert in their area of content or area of business, but also have the ability to apply that content to a range of professions, roles within inside of companies and industries. And then above all, on top of that, they also have to be amazing speakers, which is a unique skill, in addition to writing a very successful.
Good point. Yes.
That helps, right? That helps. And practice makes perfect with that. You don't know, everybody doesn't start off there for sure.
Very true.
Wonderful. Are there any, platforms? I think a big question that comes up all the time is, gosh, if I'm going to jump into the speaking world, do I have to have a certain platform? Do I have to, kind of be really, focused on, do I have to have 100,000 followers on LinkedIn or something like that? What do each of you find kind of in that that presence that someone might need to have to really be successful in the speaking space? Josh, want to take that first?
Sure, I'm happy to start with that. It's very interesting. 10, 15 years ago, I could base it on a number of books sold or media appearances or just basically visibility. But where people's fan base comes from, I use the word fans because that's what it comes down to for everybody at this point. They come from everywhere. So we work with a speaker that has his first book coming out, but we worked with him for a couple of years. He has the most read long form blog on the internet. 10 years
Mhm.
ago, I would have never worked with someone like that. But because of his visibility and in his fan base, it led to opportunity for corporate speaking engagements. And from there, we're able to partner with somebody and grow their speaking. So there has to be some level of exposure and some kind of fan base that help drive initial momentum if the individual themselves is not doing it on their own.
Mhm. Yeah, Perry, you want to add to that?
Well, I'm thinking a lot about our government and kind of niche requests that we get. Their fan base is less appealing than maybe their academic credentials, their expertise in that particular topic, whether it's DEI, leadership management, or something, artificial intelligence, the metaverse. They may not have a fan base, but they may have real expertise and a reputation in that kind of particular niche topic that my clients would be looking for. And again, to Josh's point, that certainly doesn't hurt to have a fan base, but I'm not always as interested in the fan base that as a competent person who can discuss the metaverse. If you know that person, please send that person to me. I don't think
Anybody here? We've got 46 people. Come on.
let me know. But yeah, fan base less appealing unless I'm getting a request I want somebody, a really big name. And sometimes that may not fit with my model, but I'm looking for
Yeah.
competent content providers.
And actually, I want to clarify, fan base, I also tie in notoriety or recognition of the subject. To me, it's all one and the same at the end of the day. If you're known for being a certain subject matter expert, then
Yes.
that's the fan base, all you need right there. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that both of you mentioned, it's not, again, kind of this one size fits all
Right.
for all opportunities. And it's, Josh, you mentioning that it can be this particular blog was what really kind of drew this person in and made them relevant in this particular area versus, the niche areas that someone can really dive into. And the fact that someone might be really just the voice in that particular space. Even again, I love it's just further confirming that you don't have to follow this specific mold or the specific path that everyone ahead has. You don't have to look just like Marshall Goldsmith or Dan Pink or everybody else or Susan Cain who's come before you if you're in the business world in particular with those examples to also have that success or to show your value to those who are coordinating these types of events or working with speakers or to those on the other side who are seeking out speakers in the end. I think that's really valuable for everybody to take note of here. And maybe it's that your podcast is really popular. I see that my buddy Edward Siegel's on today and his great podcast that came out recently. And, maybe it's that, like I said, maybe it's the blog, but just knowing that you can really find like where your target audience lives and focus in on how you can best connect with them. And that's what can be really impressive to the speaking world on the other side.
Yes.
Fantastic. So tell each of us, or each of you, I'd love to hear a little bit more about how you work with authors and experts. Perry, I'm going to ask you to go first in our pre-webinar conversation we had. I love that you referred to yourself as the appetizer to what Josh does. And so since you're the appetizer, would love for you to kind of take the lead on the conversation. Tell everyone a little bit more about how you work with authors.
Well, we love our authors. I have to say, I've been in this business 28 years, and I would never write a book because it's really hard to do. So for all of you listening in, congratulations on being a writer. It's hard to do. It's hard to publish, and then you've got to promote the baby once the baby's born. So I see myself as the baby is born. Here's the book. What are we going to do? How do we promote it? How do we get it out there? So I work a lot with people like at Smith. Private publicity firms. This is a great shop here, Smith. Love them. Helpful, super writers they have that they work with. So I work directly with writers. I work with agents. There are agents here on the call, a friend of mine. They might pitch me their books. And then we get a lot of referral business. I would say almost every writer we work with refers their other writer buddies to me. So a lot of my stable of writers or that I know about a particular topics have been referrals from other writers. But we talk to publicists at the big houses. We talk to private publicists. We talk to agents. And again, we talk to the authors, we get information about their books, we see what their appetite is working for us with our book tour model. We are not a speakers bureau. The writers are getting paid in non-returnable book sales through independent bookstores. We like to support indie retailers with our events. So we're launching them, we're giving them, we're super smart audiences that have picked them out of a bunch of different writers they could get. They picked you, and then we make it a very turnkey event. But many of them go to their bureaus, and we may come up with an idea, and they go, Perry, sorry, I'm off book tour. I was on tour for 3 to 6 months now. Please call Josh, or please call my bureau and work with them on this next event, which is fine. So we're kind of, when the baby is first born, kind of, the book is out, we take you and get sales going and get events going for you early on in the life of the book. That's how.
Great. And so we moved to the entree then with Josh.
It was fascinating getting to know Perry and where she is kind of in this timeline or food chain, because we kind of come in on the back end of this. Once an author has an established book, has worked with people like Smith and with Perry for their events to kind of gain that initial momentum, get that traction, get that fan base or that notoriety for that work. Really come in. The speakers we partner with, we look not to capitalize on a moment in time like a best-selling book. We look for people that are interested in sustaining a speaking career for 20, 30 years. And that book might be the entry into it, or one of the reasons why they can launch into that speaking career. So really where we come in is when they have that initial momentum, we'll come in and basically ensure that it becomes a 20, 30-year career, and also look at complementary revenue streams that our speakers can build out, like online courses or even products or swag that match up with their different services.
I love that you really got into that, and Josh and I got to know each other recently through one of our authors, and in learning about kind of the way you view the long term of it, I think is really different, and we talk about that in your bio and stuff there, Josh. But that perspective of, okay, we don't want this to just be, you see this person speak, and then what further action do you take? Kind of what's next after that, and you're thinking about the what's next. And that's very different from the traditional speakers bureaus and other agencies that I think have been out there for so long. And the fact that you're not just kind of giving that guidance, but also encouraging, individuals to think in that mindset, that those you're working with, and then help them through the process too of building out courses or adding other layers to their brand is really important. And that's something that from a publicity perspective, we always emphasize, is that we can build this awareness, but how are you bringing people, and when we're bringing people, their eyes, their ears into your platform, what next step can they take? They can buy a copy of the book, of course, but we also want them to stay with you for longer than just the book. And so when they have that really robust portfolio of offerings, whether it's speaking, whether that's really clearly presented, whether it's strong social media channels, or having a course or something, it's just giving an opportunity to keep that person. You brought them into your circle, and how do you keep them there after that? And I had the opportunity to go up to our friends at Heroic Public Speaking. If people don't know about them, you should. They're a wonderful team, and if you're looking to get into the speaker world, it's a great entry into really establishing your voice there. But our president Sandy and I, back in January of 2020, right before the world decided to implode on itself, we went to the 2-day course that they have there. And I remember Michael Port, their one founder, said, there's riches and niches in that, you want to find that space and bring people into that space, and then keep people in there with you. And I think that the more clear you can be with your niche, or your niche, I want to say it, through those other offerings, the better.
And it's really great. I mean, just frankly, I think I'm so happy to know about Josh, because I hope that we'll build a relationship where I can refer some writers that I've worked with who want to take it to the next level, because that's not what we do. So it's nice to know he's out there. There's a step next for some of these writers. And I will say, writers with the big fan bases do return to us with the new books. I mean, we've talked about Dan Pink. I mean, you know, as we say, every year Dan Pink writes a book is a good year for Hook's book events because he understands this idea. Let's launch this. Let's let everybody hear me talk. I want everybody to have the book. And that's what we come in and do and get him into organizations that might not be able to afford him through the Speakers Bureau, but that are really value his content and love getting copies of the book. So I feel like we work well together with my organization and someone like Josh. I think it's great.
Certainly. Wonderful. Well, kind of looking at that, or talking about Dan Pink, I think in particular here, someone who's got very much established his presence and his name, but thinking about, his trajectory to success, would love for each of you to weigh in on kind of, what's the hallmark of a successful speaking engagement or event in your experience? How can an individual who's listening in today or tuning in later on kind of know, okay, this was a successful event that I had, kind of what are those things that you look for in those that you work with, and how can they then build on those successes? Josh, I'd love for you to jump in first with that one.
Yeah, sure. So, obviously we want the client that hires the speaker to be happy. So the speaker delivering, performing on stage, ease to work with, that all comes into play. But the real impact a speaker can have, and the speaker that we really focus on partnering with, are people that we call leaders of thought. And these are individuals that can make a change in the audience or leave the audience with something so profound that they're going to think about it basically the rest of their life. When they encounter a situation that's applies to, this will be one of the first things that is top of mind that they remember. It could be a phrase, it could be a system, it could be a framework that that speaker teaches you. But science proves this. Ton of research on events and keynote speakers that you can really change a person's life within 30 minutes. But there's very few people that have the ability to do it. There's magic, there's work on your craft, there's content able to resonate. So there's a lot of factors that go into it. But the individuals that can do that, that's the true marker of a successful speaker.
Absolutely. Perry?
Yeah, I would totally echo that. I mean, just personally, I have a checklist. Did the author have fun and enjoy it? Did our client get out of this what they wanted? And did the person who connected me to the writer, if the writer didn't contact me directly, i.e. someone like you at Smith or its publicist, is the publicist happy and the author's happy? Those are just top of the line. But to Josh's point, I built this business on this Einstein quote that I paraphrased poorly, but he basically said something like, the consciousness that creates a problem can't be the consciousness that fixes the problem. So this idea, our tagline is infusing ideas everywhere. To, like Josh said, you want to get an aha or somebody changing maybe the direction of how they're going to approach their job, how they're going to approach colleagues. I always got some really great parenting ideas from the leadership writers I've worked with over the years, as much as, because parenting is leadership to some degree. I mean, they're certainly doing what you do, not what you say, for all of you out there who know that. So absolutely this idea of new ideas in a closed environment and then see what can happen over time is exciting. When you hear about it later, oh, I remember that event and I changed what I was doing. It's really, that's so gratifying. So I echo Josh on that 100%.
Yeah. I know not to plug our friend Michael Port too much here, but he just wrote he's one of the great voices in this space too, but he just released a book last year called The Referable Speech. And I think that was a really key thing that I took away from that conversation too. And just others that I've talked to in the space, that, if you walk off the stage and, maybe you spoke at the Northwest conference for engineers, and now, you've got someone who coordinates the Southwest conference for the engineers. Like, you want them to want that same experience and want that same speech. So ideally, success would look like the speech being referable, one that you can continue to utilize over time, that does, you might tailor in certain ways for that particular audience, but that someone just says, wow. And as you said, that impact, that moment that they said, I need other people to know about this too. Not only am I going to take this back into my life and apply it, but I want to make sure that others get to experience it as well. And I think that's ideal when, you have that great experience, and then you want to spread the word about it too.
My favorite inquiries the speakers always manage that they receive are ones that are like, I saw blah 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 speak when I was an associate at this company. Now I'm managing my own team, and I remember everything that she said, and I want to bring her to speak to my team.
Yeah.
Right?
Hmm.
5-10 years ago.
Yeah,
That
absolutely.
It's
And
the
I think
power
that
of the
further,
book. I love that. The power of
right,
the book. It's great.
it further confirms, I think, again, for everyone here that you don't have to reinvent the wheel every single time you're going into each speaking opportunity, each workshop that you're doing, whatever webinar or whatever format it is, that you can kind of create this one particular like aha angle, as Betsy's calling it in the chat here. You can create this particular message that will probably resonate with a majority of people. And you might tweak your story a little bit that you tell in the speech to apply to that audience, or tweak an example that you're sharing of another client that you worked with, whatever it might be. But ultimately, it's probably going to it's better to have kind of broader application than to zero in too much. And then it takes like the pressure off of you to have to develop something new for every single
Right.
opportunity you're stepping into.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So we're talking a lot about those individuals who again kind of get those referred speeches, and they are seeing kind of the things happen time over time. But for those who might be dipping their toe into speaking, as a newer individual, or are starting to kind of work on some early opportunities, and they want to grow their confidence and their polish, what are some recommendations that you have in really how to build that confidence as they move further into this speaking space? Perry, do you want to take the lead there?
Yes, I mean, I think practice makes perfect. I think asking for feedback is great. I like it when the authors might ask me, how did the slides do? How did you like this? Getting asked for feedback is something I would say, and I appreciate it when authors do ask that. And I usually check in with the clients after each event to get feedback and input, which I can pass on as required or appropriate. And then the other thing you mentioned, not reinventing the wheel. Which writer do you like? I mean, which speaker? If I'm writing something, who is doing it well? Look at some TED Talks. Look at writers that you think are doing it well. How are they positioning their content and getting it out there to the audience in an articulate and impressive way, that where you get that aha moment. There are people out there doing it well, and there are people out there. I think heroic public speaking is one. There are lots of private coaches. There are ways to do better and better at this as you evolve in your speaking career. But I think ask for feedback and look at people who do it well that you like, and see what you can authentically incorporate into your talk. And don't try to be the next Dan Pink if you're not Dan Pink. But you know what I mean, is he uses humor a lot. He repeats what he wants you to get. He repeats in a way that you walk away. I remember almost every book, The Major Points, because he repeats it in a great way. So but I think Josh is probably working more directly with this than I am, so he could probably add a lot more.
A lot of times it's interesting. A lot of times when I start working with a speaker, they have their craft pretty well down and they're doing a great job. It's just the fine tuning or the tweaking or figuring out how to best customize topics and things like that. But what I can tell you, very rarely do you meet someone that was born with it to knock it out of the park every single time. The majority of the best and most sought after speakers out there have worked on their craft and continually work on their craft. Speaking coaches are great. It's such a personal thing. So what one speaking coach that works for one speaker might not work for another speaker. There's a personality fit, I believe, that comes down to it. And no matter how many speaking coaches you work for or you work with, at the end of the day, they're going to leave you with homework and stuff that you have to keep doing for years and years and years. And if you don't continually do that, you're never going to reach your full potential, basically. And the last thing I'll tell you, besides getting reps in and practicing and getting out there, listening to what the audience tells you after the speech when they come up to you and say, this is what resonated the most with me, or this is my question, will help you inform your content and help you to adjust it and refine it to make it as, to hit as hard as you can with that audience. And I'll leave you with this too. Some of our best speakers that do 50 so engagements a year, they practice the speech start to finish 3 times before they go on stage.
Yeah.
You know, leading up to a week before, up into their hotel room hours before. And it surprised me to learn this, because I'm like, oh, you guys do this 50 times a year. But, you know, for them to hit it out of the park, you know, not to have one stumble in that 45 minutes or 60 minutes, for them to pause for the right joke, just like a stand-up comedian, they need those reps.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I've heard so key to make sure that you're, again, with those reps, that you are ready for the technical difficulties, that you're ready, that if you do have slides, if you do have a presentation as part of your keynote, that if that goes down, that you're still delivering the same presentation without it, you know. And so just kind of being prepared, I think, for those what if moments that might arise, and knowing that, you know, I'm sure ideally you don't want people's eyes to be on the screen the whole time. You want them to be on you in those exciting moments of engaging in those core themes that you're trying to get across. And so, you know, again, and I swear I'm not an infomercial for public speaking, but I keep bringing them up. And that what I found so interesting through kind of learning about the process with them was that, you know, the content, of course, is so important, but it actually, what you really want to make sure too is, you know, where's your positioning on the stage? Are you just pacing back and forth? Like how, you know, really thinking about the other elements of the experience beyond just what's coming out of your mouth, and making sure that you're, again, if you're telling a story, maybe you're acting it out in certain ways, or you're just, you know, you're purposeful in where you're standing on the stage and things like that too. So I think that anyone who's kind of growing and developing in this world is to very much focus on the content and that feedback that you're getting, but also think about how you're portraying the content, how you're delivering the content, through your body language, through your stage placement, things like that as well.
Yes. Good point.
Sure.
Except on Zoom when we were like this.
Oh, I know, right?
Those first months on Zoom when we did the pivot to, you know, online events, and nobody could figure out the whole Zoom thing. It was pretty funny.
Where did my hands go?
Yeah,
right?
where did they go? So everybody was patient around that, so that was fun.
Absolutely. And I saw so many speakers get so creative during that time. And, you know, there was one individual who we knew during that time, and one of the key elements of his speaking engagements was he had a drum set on stage with him, and he performed. And then a lot of people had buckets that were their drums that were part of the whole engagement. And so when you move that to Zoom, you know, it's totally different, and you have to totally shift. And he set up this amazing studio to still give that similar experience. And I gave so much credit to individuals who pivoted like they've never pivoted before in the speaker world as we went into COVID.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah. So Josh, I'm going to pass this next question over to you first, since this is primarily your space in how does one land a speaker agent these days? And the question we get all the time, you know, who should I work with? How should I work with someone? And there's a question that came in the chat too from Gina earlier that I wanted to highlight that's kind of related to this is, do people often belong to multiple speakers bureaus or work with, you know, multiple speaker agents at a time? So Josh, would love for you to kind of weigh in first on landing a speaker agent, kind of being part of different agencies, and also, you know, how imperative is it for today's speakers to actually have an agent and representative in that space?
Sure. So the first question I ask every speaker is, why do you want a representative? And the answer to that is very telling with whether you need one or not, and the type of speakers bureau or representative you should find. For example, if you have like a very niche topic and you want to grow that niche and not, you know, like let's say healthcare, for example, and not really go without it, there are certain speaker bureaus that really, there's like speakers on healthcare that really only work with healthcare, or some bureaus that have a big part of the revenue tied to healthcare organizations. Also, there are different models, right? Working with many bureaus versus one. In some bureaus, they're really good at vetting your incoming leads, but they're not, they're not proactive on behalf of the speakers. And some speakers, that's all they need. They need someone, they're getting a volume of requests, and they need someone to vet them and book them for them. There are others that want to want a 20 or 30-year career. They want to grow different revenue streams that are complementary to speaking in their books and such. And so working with more of a manager or someone like that might be of interest. So that's not to say it's just like the talent industry for actors and everybody else. There's all types of different representation and all different types of models. And so the best thing that people can do is take stock of what they're looking for in representation and what their goals are, and then go and seek those companies and those individuals out. That might be the best, and not sign with anybody that will sign.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Perry, I'm not sure if you want to weigh on that in particular, or even how important it is through your model and how you work that there be someone to kind of facilitate those ways, or be present as representative to the author.
Well, I have relationships with speaking agents, and I've referred writers to them, to check them out. Could this be a good fit for you? Sometimes it is kind of, per Josh's point, it's a function of what their goals are, which is always the question you ask when they write the book anyway. What are you really trying to do with this book? What's your long-term vision for the book? It's a marathon, not a sprint, as we know. But because we're not a speaking agent, I have relationships, and I'm adding Josh to that now because he's got a little bit of a different model than some of the larger speaking agents that I've worked with in the past. It's nice to know about this, the way Josh is handling his speakers. So it's not necessary for me. Many of the writers we work with, a lot of big named writers that have bureaus, they work with us. That might be a limited working with our business model, and then off they go to the Speakers Bureau. But it's not like I said, I'm the appetizer before they go off there. But I'm happy to know about Josh and what he's doing, because I think I can refer some people.
Yeah. And something I've heard that's worked well for others recently too has been, if you're starting out, if this is a newer space for you, and maybe you're not ready just yet for Josh's representation, if you need to, kind of get out there and get your feet wet a bit more with it. I've heard really wonderful feedback from some of our clients that, through just kind of research through virtual assistants and such, of just identifying maybe some local and regional opportunities for them to tap into first. Maybe it's with chambers of commerce, maybe it's with certain associations in your area, or just, how can you start to test that out? If you think about comedians, comedians test out their material. Even the biggest ones, they'll go to small clubs, they'll go to small, venues to test out their material before they go on a new tour. And so I think there's a lot of value in maybe identifying some of those more local opportunities or smaller market opportunities to test the waters with first before you try to jump in with the big fish. And again, you want that referable speech. So the last thing you want to do is not just that you would bomb, because I'm sure they're not going to book you if that would be the case, but you don't want to go out there unless you really feel like you're ready and you really feel like you've done all that practice and you've gotten that important feedback. So I think, working with some of the resources you might already have internally to start maybe just researching, identifying some of those opportunities, working with, just a coach who can kind of guide you through some of the content and the adaptation from your book content into speaking and such, I think is a great first step for those who might not just be ready for the big leagues yet.
So Josh, one more thing, Josh said something important, that the speaker needs to get the agent that's going to get that speaker to where he or she wants to go. What we have found over years, a lot of times speakers with agents still work with us because they feel like we're hustling harder for them than their agents. So if that, sort of like what Josh is saying, if they're not going to meet your needs, maybe you're with the wrong agent. So do your homework up front. And I think that's a great, Josh, that's a smart approach,
Yeah.
It's not one size fit all.
I know some speakers that have no interest in getting a monetary fee. They just want to sell books, right? So that wouldn't be a good fit for me. I'd send them over to Perry, for example, right? Sure. And others that do want representation, but because of their family situation or whatever, they only can travel 10 days, for 10 events a year, right? That's not a good fit for us. Our speakers need to do at least 30. So it's very, there's different models across this entire industry for a wealth of different needs speakers have.
Right.
Fantastic. We have a couple more questions from our side that I'm going to jump into in a second here, but I do see a few popping up in the Q&A, and I want to encourage anyone else participating today to either, if you have a question you'd like answered today, feel free to add it into the Q&A or in the chat. We're going to have about 15 minutes at the end here for some further questions from everyone. So Susan and Gina, I've got you flagged here, and I'll definitely add those in for our Q&A once we jump over to that. But again, everyone else, feel free to add yours in as well. So Josh, I'm going to have you take the lead on this one first too. Again, we were kind of touching upon a little bit earlier, but beyond direct speaking fees, what are some of the other options authors should consider in terms of compensation for their speaking events and opportunities?
Sure. So there's a ton of different things that authors can do now. From speaking related workshops, trainings. There's also coaching, individual group coaching. A great thing is creating online courses that individuals can take, but also companies can buy for their teams or for their entire organization. Even creating products such as like a journal, for example, is something that can be sold, and also video series. And it's really interesting, with this, you hear about these social media influencers and all the paid partnerships they do. This is really creeping into the business world as well. Companies looking for expertise, especially in the B2B space. So there's a whole paid partnership world that it is coming to the surface as well.
Great. Perry, I think we know your answer to that is that
I'll leave that
all
to
book
Josh.
sales, right?
I'd leave that to Josh, but I will say maybe 10 years ago, I worked with a friend of mine in California. We developed a product for taking the conversation deeper into the organization, kind of an online platform, kind of course, designing a course for the certain books, so particularly for federal government, so that they could get the content, and then how does it get deeper into the organization. It was kind of anyway, we made this whole thing up, and then the government said, well, maybe no, we don't want that after we created it. So there you go. But it's sort of what Josh is doing now. I think that's really smart. And many of our writers get called back for consulting fees after their talks. And, it's the hors d'oeuvre for the book is the hors d'oeuvre for their consulting. And, this is just another audience for that. And they can get called back to where we took them and, have a consulting relationship, which is probably why they wrote the book in the first place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Great.
I was going to say there's a big ecosystem
Yeah.
here that we're kind of dancing around, but books can lead to speaking, speaking can lead to other revenue streams, and vice versa too. Speaking can lead to exposure to launch a book.
Yes.
Yeah. So our last question on this side, and then we're going to jump over to the Q&A, is how can an author best and most consistently tie their speaking topic back to their book? So again, I think we're seeing some of these ways of, again, this ecosystem, these connections, but anything more, especially within the content that they're specifically sharing within their speech, that you think is really important to make sure it ties back to the book. Perry, do you want to take the lead on that?
Yeah, well, I mean, we position ours as book talk, so the book is the thing. So it is about the book, and it's about the book, for the book, by the book, and everybody gets a book. So the whole thing it's the classic bookstore. I had bookstore experience, so I took writers used to go on book tour and go to bookstores, and I'm taking that experience privately. So pretty much throughout, the slides will reference it. But at our events, everybody leaves with a book, so it's pretty clear it's about the book. So, that's what we do. We're amplifying the book launch itself, and if people want to know about what they're going to talk, we had somebody say, "Well, what is she going to talk about?" I go, "The book," which is in your hand. The slides are going to reflect the content of the book. It's going to be a truncated, Cliff Note version of the book in 1 hour. So, good. So, yeah. But Josh probably, as his folks expand their reach, he maybe has tactics for folks to use to tie it directly back to books and book sales.
Well, for the majority of our speakers, the meat and potatoes of their presentation, of their content, is contained in the books they've written a lot of times, right? But the headline and the summary might not be exactly the same, because as time goes on, context or the content might change, or the value of it, but the true value of the content still exists, but how you frame it or the lens you look at it through might change. So a lot of our speakers, they have books that were released 10 years ago and they're still speaking on the content of that book, but the frame of reference for that topic or what they're presenting has changed with the times or what's most relevant. Yeah. It's the same with like, you can also look at terms like teamwork and teams and collaboration, those all change, right? Innovation,
Leadership,
Right.
creativity, right? How people look at those words and when they use them has changed over the 16 plus years I've been doing this. While some of the best speeches and speakers on those topics, their content hasn't really changed. It's just evolved with the time.
Right. Good point.
Yeah. So that kind of brings into our Q&A portion. We've got quite a few of them here to jump into together. And I think I'm going to jump ahead to Sandy's question because it's kind of along the lines of what you were just discussing. What topics would you say are kind of in or highly sought after right now? And are there any topics that you're really finding are oversaturated or not as popular as maybe they were in years past? I'm sure, especially as we talk about the corporate world, it's quickly evolving all the time as to what we want to focus on. But Josh, would love to hear your take on that.
Yeah, so I mean, in the business world, there's classic topics that never go away: leadership, teamwork, innovation, creativity, storytelling, for example. And they're definitely oversaturated with how many speakers that exist. But the speakers actually own that space. There aren't many because frankly, there are very few that have very unique work or own their own work in the space that resonates. The more you can come up with original work for us in bigger topic categories and become the expert on that, the better off you are having a long career. Things like for the flip side of this, a topic like technology future. My first 10 years in this industry, that was a huge request. The past 5, 6, 7 years, that's kind of gone away because we're living with the same technology we have since I've entered this industry. But it's starting to come back again because with like Web3 and cryptocurrency, there's all the metaverse, right? There's all these things that even the top 10 executives in these big Fortune 500 companies don't know the answers to.
Right.
So those are topics, that's a timely topic that's going to come back around and be around for 10 years. And then it'll probably go away again once we live with that technology for a long enough time. And that circle, recreates itself. A bunch of
Yeah. Perry, I'd love to have you weigh in on that. I'm going to kind of even specify this a little bit more because I know it's a huge thing we've seen over the last couple of years, and even looking into 2023 with upcoming book launches is the DE&I space.
Yeah.
And would love to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, that's what I was going to add. Frankly, we have always promoted diverse writers, and have tried to. We have a know-ahead list, and we put a lot of writers of all types of diversity on there. And literally in the last, it took about, under a previous administration, there was not much of that. It was actually not allowed to, we couldn't do DEI topics, but now we are. And it's just so great to be showcasing writers, such diverse writers on that topic. I would also say what I'm seeing, and I think we're going to see more of this because I think it's a bigger problem, mental health and anxiety. I think mental health is probably the health problem globally. I think you see that exhibiting in the news every day in a lot of different ways. So I think from COVID, just there are 1,000 things that's making everyone anxious, and it's creeping into the workplace. As you all know, are you going to go back to work? Is it the hybrid workplace? Is it this workplace? So I think there's a lot of anxiety. And so we did a lot with one writer. Her book was about anxiety, and I'm seeing more requests for either something funny or something inspiring or something around mental health along with the DEI. And as Josh said, absolutely leadership, management, change, because all life is change. Those will always be front runners. But I'm looking in the mental health space.
That's really interesting. We've definitely seen that on our side with the kind of, we call it the business light titles that we work on all the time. It's that convergence between the business space and lifestyle space where you're talking about empathetic leadership together, or you're talking about mindfulness in the workplace,
Yes.
and those worlds that are crashing together, that we need to keep digging even further into.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. So I love it. We've got a couple kind of logistical questions here. So Susan asked, how important are slides to kind of getting a key message across in a speech? She shares that she thinks it can be impactful and engaging without them, but interested in your thoughts on whether or not slides and presentations are needed as part of a keynote in particular we'll focus on here. So Josh, what are your thoughts?
It comes down to the individual speaker. There are very few people out there that are gifted that can command the attention just by being on the stage and walking back and forth across it. I've seen it, but the majority of speakers, especially the business speakers we work with, need slides to support or underscore points. They should never be text heavy. But there's really two schools of thought that I see are successful. One, you have very little slides to really underscore a point. Or the other, you have 70, sometimes more than 120 per hour, and the speaker's going through them because they're colorful, they're images, they're big words, the underscore points, and that really works too.
Yeah.
But one thing that doesn't work is text heavy slides where it's basically recapping word for word your presentation, or is giving your presentation and you're just putting.
Yeah. I echo everything.
Yeah.
It's absolutely true. I think the bigger words, maybe a one-word slide or something that builds the story you're telling, and that the writer can advance, and it literally, the slides themselves may be building, and then you get the whole story. It can be very engaging, or it can be very distracting, or it can be very sleep-inducing. So you want to hit that balance, and we find we work a lot with academics and professors, and they're generally pretty good, because I said they've got to keep the 12-year-olds awake in those classes, or 18, 20-year-olds, keep them engaged with exactly what Josh described.
And kind of going off of that too, I'd love your thoughts, taking the potential likelihood of technical difficulties with it. What are your thoughts on like multimedia within your presentation? So like a video clip that you go to or something like that, does that like just take people out of the room basically and take them to a new space? Or is it better to kind of keep them there with those the text focused or image focused slides? Any kind of thoughts on that? Josh, again, I think you're working that space.
Audio and video, if used the right way and planned for correctly, can enhance a presentation. But I will say, if there's any fear of malfunctioning or it not working, your best to remove it.
Yeah.
Not risk it.
Yeah, I agree. We generally have tech checks before. I'm sure, I know Josh does too, to try the videos out and make sure. But I remember one event we did, it was in person pre-COVID, and it was an astronaut, and he had taped the lift off, and it totally made the presentation, because it was as loud and vibrating and shaking. You literally felt like you were on that thing.
So cool.
And it was just so cool. It was a great way to start the gig. But if it hadn't worked, it would have been kind of a disaster. But luckily it did. They can enhance or they can detract. But I do think you need to be prepared to carry on without it.
Yes.
And I'm sure Josh has seen that, because stuff happens. Are you polished enough to not skip a beat, keep going?
Yes, Perry makes a great point. Whenever anything that can go wrong, you as the speaker need to be prepared to not miss a beat and continue on. You should never stop a presentation. I mean, I've seen this so many times, even with speakers being paid lots and lots of money, stop a presentation, try to work it out. Your audience is more deserving than even 2 minutes of applause.
Just give it up, right? Just let it go.
Yes.
Yeah. So Gina had asked a couple questions, and one was that she hadn't heard the phrase speaker's agent before, probably more so like bureau or representative in some ways. So just curious, kind of the differences between maybe bureaus versus agencies. If it's an agent, are they maybe individuals usually, or are they working with a company? And does it vary in how they might be compensated? I'm sure it's it depends situation. but again, Josh, want to weigh in on that? That's a
Sure, I'm
it's
happy
kind of
to
your
give
wheelhouse.
a brief, quick scoop. I guess the term agent can apply to anybody that works at a speaker bureau that books the actual speaking engagement. There's really three primary models in the speaking bureau industry for representation or how we work with speakers. One is the non-exclusive model. So these are speakers that pretty much run their own businesses, have their own teams to do speaking, and they work with a number of different bureaus, and they give those bureaus full commission. And that relationship is, the expectation is that those bureaus that you're partnered with are pitching you as the speaker to their clients more often than speakers that they don't have a relationship with. The next model is exclusivity. So if you're exclusive with a single bureau, all your bookings go through that bureau. And if another speaker's bureau would like to book you, they have to book it through that the bureau that represents you exclusively. And many times they're splitting commission. So let's say you're giving 20% commission is what your bureau receives. Your bureau would be giving the other bureau 10%. So that sometimes disincentivizes bureaus to recommend you if you're exclusive with one agency, but sometimes the speaker wants that because they have a limited amount of dates. They want to control every piece of communication, so that model works. And then there's a newer model that's appeared over the past 5, 6, 7 years that was invented by a guy named Tony D'Amelio. We'll give him credit for this, the management model. And this is where you work with a speaker bureau. This is how we run our representation model. Where you have someone managing your speaking business and sometimes other revenue streams. And the way that model works is we allow any bureau to basically book you as long as they're a legitimate bureau. And you as the speaker are giving a full commission to that bureau in addition to the management fee to us. So it's a great model. So the speakers, when the booking originates from another speaker's bureau, gives up a little bit more commission, usually about 10% more overall. However, you're still incentivizing all these other bureaus, all these other sources basically for bookings to recommend you to their clients.
That's great. No, thank you for diving into that and kind of clarifying, because I think that it's evolved so much over the last couple of years, especially that kind of knowing that it's not all just the original way of with speakers bureaus. I think most of us think is really great to know. And Perry, a question for you too. Do book tours stay relevant months after a launch? So she said, if I have momentum, do I just keep extending the efforts? Is 1 or 2 events a month considered momentum? So kind of in terms of timing, or around the launch and after the launch in particular, what could that momentum look like?
I think if you've got the momentum, keep going. And if you have a bureau or an agent, you might want to discuss it with them. Like I said, I'm working with writers, after the book tour, but they'll go, yeah, that is an audience I really want. I want to talk to them. I'm going to work with you. I think it becomes a hybrid at that point, or it might be we've worked with people that say, Perry, we love what you're doing. We want to work with you, and we're going to give you 2 events, and you do 2 events, and then we're going to our speaking agent. So if you've got momentum and you're having fun, I think also don't forget this should be fun for you, the writers out there, that you're engaging with the audiences, you're having that communication with them, you're getting your idea across, they're enjoying your book, and you've got some momentum. I think that's up to you. If you're having fun and that model is working for you, I'd say keep doing it. That would be where we would keep working with you, and we do. We keep working with writers well after the book is technically not new anymore. Books are only new for a very short period of time. I don't think people realize that. A new book is not very old. It doesn't stay new for too long, but we'll continue to offer ideas to writers when it's maybe 8 to 12 months old, or maybe even older than that before the paperback. And if they want to do it, most of the times they do. They like the opportunity to speak to our particular audiences, and they like the book sales, and they like supporting independent bookstores, which we have 5 in our network. They like that. Yeah.
That's wonderful. So we had one more question in the chat, and it's a little bit PR specific. So Michelle, I'm gonna, I think maybe the kind of differences between children's book and nonfiction adult PR would be a great conversation for us to have offline. We can connect with one of our team members to talk about that. But what I'd love to add into that is really the connection between PR and the speaker world. And how we often work together. And we love when there's a speaker agent or a speaker connections included within a project, because what we want to hear from those teams on our side is, what's the response that you're getting? What are the questions that are being asked at the end of the keynote? Those could be really great pitching angles, because those are pain points and challenges that those audiences are facing at this particular time. Further to that, we love to know, like, are there certain industries or kind of areas that you're targeting? So while for us, again, there's a reason why, we don't, a lot of authors ask us, oh, well, do you include speaking opportunities and outreach for us? And I'm like, as we've heard today, it is a very robust and busy world that needs its own special representatives doing it. And it's not something we can just simply tack into our publicity campaigns. But we love to really focus on is, where does that target audience live? And maybe there's certain associations, organizations that are connected to the audiences that your agents might be targeting, if they're proactively reaching out for you, on your behalf, that we can go after the media entities and show that tailored kind of voice and that tailored messaging for that audience. So I love to use a great example from a past client of ours, John Livesey, who's pretty much a full-time speaker. And John had a great book about storytelling, going back to that topic, Josh, there. And I remember working with his speaker agent at the time, and they said, we're planning on reaching out to the legal industry for John over the coming months. And so we started targeting legal focused media, and got an opportunity for John to write a piece for the American Bar Association's blog. And so with that blog, their agents were able to incorporate that blog into the pitches they were sending out and show, here's John's voice specifically for that legal industry, even though he didn't necessarily have any speaking clips or things to share with him speaking to that world yet. And that helped to secure a couple of opportunities for him. So that collaboration is so important from our end as well, and really understanding how can we best support the efforts that the speaker agents and those are putting forth. And again, what can we learn on the other side of the questions, the pain points, the conversations that are happening as the speaker, the author is going through each of those events. And so again, we love to work in tandem with individuals like Josh and Perry and get that great feedback.
Likewise.
Yeah. We love
wonderful.
With. Yeah, we've had a great relationship. You guys are great and easy to work with. We love it.
Yes, we as well.
Thanks so much. Well, the feelings are mutual, and with that, we are at our time today. An hour has flown by, as it usually does with these wonderful conversations, and I want to thank everyone so much for joining us today. We will be sending out a recording of this, so if you were registered and you joined us today, you'll still get a recording. But anyone who wasn't registered or who was registered but couldn't attend will also get a recording as well. And we'll be sharing it through our website and some other channels. But Josh, Perry, thank you so much for joining us today and taking time out of your busy days to be part of this really great conversation.
Good job, Marissa. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
This was fun. You're a good moderator. You're really talented.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you're good. And
Maybe I
Josh,
have a speaking career in my future.
yeah, I was going to say, talk to Josh. Yeah.
You guys are great. Thank you so much. And I hope you have wonderful days ahead. And thank you to all who joined us today. Have a great day.
Bye. Bye, Josh. We'll be in touch.
Bye. Yes.